American Tales of Terror 2, reviewed by a British person. There you go. So American Tales of Terror 2 is a 2023 anthology movie, obviously a sequel to American Tales of Terror. And I believe there is a third movie coming out as well. So this is a low budget collection of short films that I think are all independently produced and just collected together. There's no wraparound story, there's no real theme. It's just 3 short films bundled together, and here you go, there's a compilation. Now, because these films are less plentiful, there's only 3 of them, and a lot of anthologies tend to have a more of a kind of, you know, maybe 5, 6 sometimes stories. They tend to be a little longer in this one because there's only 3 of them, which is, I think, a good thing. Because it gives the stories a little bit more chance to have characterization and things like that. I think is always a little disadvantage to short films because, you know, they have less time to really build characters. So let's talk about it. The first film in this kind of collection is about a group of teenagers decide to break into this kind of abandoned house which has had a long history of shenanigans going on, you might say, and kind of the local kind of urban legends about various things that have gone on in this house, including the this kind of guy who wore a skull mask and, you know, was kind of a murderer and etc. So these kind of teenagers kind of end up going in there, and of course, the urban legend are true. This movie actually does, of course, have a haunted house complete with a mask-wearing kind of demonic kind of entity, along with a variety of kind of ghosts as well. And it plays a little bit like a zombie movie in some ways. We have these kind of kids getting affected by this kind of force and turning into demon zombie-like creatures and wounding other kids and then get infected and things like this. So that's kind of how it plays out. I mean, it's not much more complicated than that. What can we say that works? The one thing that struck me with this film, I would say I was quite impressed with the VFX on this one. Again, these are low-budget, independently produced movies. They're not kind of like big budgets behind them, but I think the level of VFX to this kind of film was impressive. It's all practical, and for the most part, I thought it worked pretty well. I mean, the guy who's wearing this, our main bad guy, so to speak, looked pretty effective with this kind of skull kind of mask, and it's not just like he's wearing a mask. He's got it in sort of ingrained in his head is the best way I would describe it. But we have a variety of kind of possessions where they kind of all become kind of demonic and things, and we have various kind of wounds and kind of kills that have this kind of gore effect on it. And yeah, there's a couple of times it looks a little bit kind of like silly makeup and stuff, and it's only really on the face a couple of times, but I would say more times than not the effects are pretty good and, you know, impressive for this kind of this low budget of a movie. And, you know, they're quite plentiful of it as well. So I think this section, this portion, this short film, you know, you won't feel cheated. You feel like you've got a kind of a good value, so to speak, because there's quite a lot of kind of on-screen kind of overt horror on display here. This is, you know, certainly a kind of in-your-face kind of horror film. More or less all takes place in this kind of one, you know, house, which is, you know, obviously seemingly abandoned and everything. So it always has this kind of like this dark kind of like cinematography. It's obviously, you know, it's in the night and everything. So it always has a little bit of a kind of like a what's kind of lurking around the corner kind of vibe to it, which I think did alright. I think the cast are okay, nothing special. I didn't really feel that there was a particularly much work done on characterization, if I'm honest. You know, they were all kind of completely forgettable. Even, to be honest with you, after having just watched this movie, I'm thinking, what are those characters again? I can't remember. You know, so, you know, there's very little done in regards to that. They're just kind of like ones to go through the kind of like the meat grinder, so to speak. But there's a couple of like there's maybe one guy who kind of fights back a little more than the others, and I thought he was like a little bit more memorable. But the rest of them, I couldn't tell you anything about them, to be honest. But it wasn't terrible. It was not distracting them. Oh my god, the acting is bad here or anything like that. It's just a very kind of like simple. Kids go into a house. There's beasties there. That's it. So fun, simple, undemanding, certainly uncomplicated, but with some decent VFX. The second one is a little bit more of a creepy film. It plays a little bit like Annabelle, the kind of the doll movie. So we have this kind of couple that buy this house, and it's seemingly too cheap for such a kind of great house. And of course, this is because there was various kind of like, you know, shenanigans that have gone on. This is the only film where I had a recognisable actress in it, Julianne Prescott, who was the only one I recognised in this entire 3 films. Yeah, so it very much plays like Annabelle. There's this creepy doll there that they find in the house, and the wife doesn't like it, so she throws it up, and it keeps returning and returning. And obviously, creepy stuff kind of starts to happen. I actually thought the doll was quite a good prop, because it's kind of one of these ones where it's not made to look too overtly horrific, if that makes sense. I think sometimes when you have these killer doll movies, they look like, oh, it just looks evil, and therefore it looks over-designed. But at the same time, if it doesn't look threatening at all, doesn't look kind of creepy, it's just like a regular doll that you're going to buy, in a shop or something. So I find, sometimes you can go one way or the other with these doll movies. So I think they got the prop kind of quite right here. It kind of looks a little menacing, but without looking too overtly kind of like it's been designed to, if that makes sense. It kind of looks handmade and stuff. So I quite like the design of the doll. This is more Annabelle than Chucky. Don't expect it to be running around doing things. So this plays a little bit more like a kind of a creepy kind of movie. For example, there's a couple of good scenes where, for example, the wife goes to bed and she kind of wakes up, and her head is literally just about to go into the hob with boiling water on it, and she kind of wakes herself up and she's just about to dunk her own head in boiling water and stuff. So there's a couple of, I think, okay kind of like setups for some kind of like horror moments. Again, the story is very much like you've seen before. I don't think it's anything new. I think the acting on this one, I think the wife was okay. I think the husband was a little weak, to be honest. He's not a big character though, to be fair. But yeah, at least I think this one has a little bit more of an arc. It's actually a bit more story than the actual first movie, which just seemed to be kind of like kids go into a house and things happen. This one has a little bit more of a narrative, I suppose. But yeah, it's nothing you haven't seen before. And then the third one, so this one is about a kind of ballet dance school, and we have a group of trainee ballet dancers, and one of them seems to be having some problems, and it's got this kind of like typical kind of like the blonde bully girl who's kind of mean to her, and this kind of I guess our main character, she kind of falls over, and all the other girls are kind of laughing at her and things, and so she decides, as she would, to turn to black magic and get revenge on her bullies, and that's about it. Yeah, this one is interesting to a degree, because that's literally the plot. There's nothing else to it, but it has this like very drawn out sequences of the actual ballet dancing, or of this girl kind of like concocting this kind of like spell and stuff. There's very little dialogue in this this movie. Now, I will say, I think if you are a fan of like ballet and stuff, they take that subject quite seriously. I feel it's treated like these kind of dancers are like real dancers, if that makes sense. It looks like they are, like it would really be at a kind of a dance school. I mean, I think because there's so little dialogue here, it's hard to kind of like really judge the acting. The only thing I would say is, like, I mean, there's a scene where the inciting incident is where this sort of ballet dancer just sort of trips and falls on the floor, and then everyone's like, laughing, and then one takes a photo, and they're all looking like at the photo while this girl's like still on the floor. I'm like, you can literally see her on the floor. Why are you huddled around looking at this photo when the girl is still on the floor? And it's like, ooh, someone's fallen over. It's not that big a deal. I don't know. That, to me, that scene didn't work. It just seemed a little bit too... That incident should have been played a little differently. It just seemed too mundane for it to be that of a bigger deal, to be honest, and I don't really understand why. I'm sure in ballet classes people trip and people fall. I really don't think that would have been a huge deal, and not one of them kind of like, oh, you're right, you know, nothing like nothing like that. That's the one section where I felt this movie just didn't really kind of ring true to me. But I will say the rest of it, they kind of acted like, you know, I would imagine ballet dancers would do. I have one of my ex-girlfriends was a ballet dancer, so I kind of have some insight to, you know, that world, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like more drama than horror, and again, very little narrative, to be honest. So, you know, it's relatively kind of interesting, but there's just not a lot to it. So overall, I don't think any of these movies are necessarily a dud, to be honest with you. I think they're all reasonably kind of entertaining if you like your kind of low budget horror, but I don't think any of them stand like above average, to be honest with you. They all just seem fairly okay, and that's kind of what I'll give my rating at, a 5. You know, average, fairly okay, not really kind of standing out from the pack, but not terrible either. Have you seen this one or the first movie? Please do let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.